This is the first video on what might end up as a series of tutorials of more advanced techniques for making Doom maps. Similar to the most popular video on this channel as of May 2026, this tutorial is a response to existing ones. I see a lot of videos on YouTube about learning the basics of Doom mapping, but resources for further knowledge are fairly slim. The series is aimed at mappers who are already proficient with the basics of using a map editor and are capable of creating simple maps, but want to see what more is possible. It's also aimed at mappers primarily interested in mapping under Boom or MBF21 mapping standards. I will mainly be discussing things you can do in Boom, but MBF21 will be brought up when it's relevant. If you're mapping for a ZDoom based standard, most of this won't be relevant to you, and I recommend looking into ACS scripting instead. If you place a second player 1 start in your map, what spawns in its place is an identical copy of the player colloquially referred to as a voodoo doll. There's a good Decino video I will link in the description that specifically goes into how they work, but all you should care about right now is that they can activate walkover line actions, so actions in your map can happen remotely and automatically through Boom's scrolling floors. If, say, you put a voodoo doll in a scrolling closet and have a small sector with a lowered ceiling blocking the voodoo doll from scrolling forward, suddenly you can already do a lot of things that you can't with just the basic line actions. You can make as many actions as you want happen at the same time, or you can make delayed actions, or you can do both. It's useful for if you happen to need to move a lot of sectors with different tags, maybe you want a fight that evolves over time and slowly opens more areas or lets more monsters in, maybe you want slower and dramatic moments, or even makeshift cutscenes. Additionally, these can be reset and made repeatable by teleporting the voodoo doll back to the start of the closet and having some line def to make the sector block the doll again, as it started. If you remove the blocking sector in the first place, you can have some repeating fancy effects, perhaps the most famous being this type of light sequence popularized by Dana Bavinga's WADs. This is a really simple effect to replicate. Just have the voodoo trigger line action 81 over a sequence of tagged sectors, and give those sectors in question sector effect 8. Also make sure those sectors are connected in some way to a darker sector or the effect won't work. All of what I've mentioned so far is already exceptionally convenient and can do a lot of things I haven't mentioned if you apply a little creativity. Voodoo dolls can reach another tier, however, if you use more sectors to block them from scrolling. This is the baseline for creating logic gates in Voodoo. You can easily have an AND statement by requiring several sectors that need to be opened before the Voodoo scrolls. You can make exclusive statements with several Voodoo closets. Say, an exclusive OR statement for a door to open. You could have 3 closets, 2 of which open the door, with both only needing one of the 2 switches pressed, and the third closes the door if both of them are pressed. You can make a simple password system by having a series of switches, where each leads to a Voodoo closet that changes what the following correct switch does, maybe blocking one Voodoo closet that kills the player and opening part of one that progresses the puzzle. If you're feeling especially fancy, you can add random elements to maps, although describing how this works would take too much time for this video. In the description I have a link towards a collection of test maps, some featuring random elements if you're curious. At large, being good at Voodoo requires a strong fundamental understanding of the game, how individual actions work, and more importantly, being creative with your problem solving. Don't just stick to a handful of line def actions for designing Voodoo. I've fallen into that trap before of having a more narrow view than necessary when solving problems. Door or lift actions are great for time sequences, especially with Boom's generalized actions being able to customize how long their effects will last, and actions that raise or lower sectors by a flat amount of map units are a very convenient, simple way to count. Don't be afraid to mess with the shape and structure of Voodoo closets too. All that matters is a Voodoo reaching line actions when it's supposed to under the correct conditions, and you have a boatload of tools at your disposal to design these conditions. Also, really, don't feel bad about looking inside other maps on your map editor to better understand how something you're interested in works. Understanding how others tackle problems can offer a fresh perspective on your own and will generally improve your skill and versatility. Some small tips to close on. If you want the most precision with timing your Voodoo dolls, I suggest making the line def to scroll the floor of the sector exactly 35 map units long. This will scroll the Voodoo exactly 1 map unit per tick, so you can control when things happen as precisely as physically possible within the constraints of non-ZDoom based ports. If you're having trouble with the speed of a Voodoo doll activating a line def, instead of increasing the speed of the scrolling floor, I would suggest minimizing the time that the blocking sectors spend opening. In a Voodoo closet of 56 map units tall, if you have a floor that's all the way up and kissing the ceiling, and use a slow floor lower action to open it, which moves a 1 map unit per tick, it'll be closer to 2 seconds before that Voodoo doll moves, as Doomguy's height is 56 map units. Instead, have it so the Voodoo doll is only being blocked by 1 map unit. These tips are largely irrelevant to standard use, but if you're making something that depends on good timing, clean Voodoo etiquette like this can be invaluable. That's it for the fundamentals of Voodoo dolls. If you have any questions, then please ask them and I'll try to respond as best I can. Voodoo has more in common with engineering than programming. It isn't so much programming as much as it's manipulating electricity to do your bidding. Since you are designing the computer all yourself, you can metaphorically create whatever wacky looking circuit boards suit your specific purposes and tastes. Voodoo is so open-ended, and I can only tell you what techniques work best for me, though I hope you've come away from this with the tools to find what works best for you.